I'm not one of the people to call the office throughout the week and fight for everything. I'm just going to make whatever we do work.
More like this!
I'm different. Very unique character. I'm an ordinary person. I just do extraordinary things.
How did Kurt Angle get you into pro wrestling?
Kurt told me at the time, pro wrestling is our pro sport. One thing led to the next, and I ended up in WWE.
Battle of the Billionaires. Did you show Trump how to do that clothesline?
Leading into that match, there wasn't supposed to be any altercation.
You jumped through the cage.
It had to be done, so I made it happen.
Why did AEW make the most sense?
The guys are working as a team. That's a cool place to be in.
What do you want your legacy to be?
If people say Bobby is a good guy, that's enough for me.
This interview with Bobby Lashley is almost 18 years in the making to the day. He was my first ever wrestling interview back in 2007. Check this out. He was the ECW champion at the time. I was just starting out my TV career with that ridiculous Miz-like hair that I had. I only had it for like a few weeks, but it just happened to be during this interview. Before we dive into this, and it is such a good one, this episode is brought to you by War Thunder. War Thunder is the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made, and it's available now for free on PC, consoles, and mobile devices. Take control of over 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships of 10 major nations, ranging from biplanes and armored cars of the 1920s to the fighter jets and main battle tanks of today. Join over 70 million players worldwide in epic PvP battles with War Thunder and dive into this world that has incredibly detailed vehicles, realistic graphics, and authentic sound effects. War Thunder is one of the most sophisticated vehicle damage models in all gaming. Like, if you're a history buff, you're gonna love this, because every vehicle here is intricately modeled down to things like engines, fuel tanks, weapons, and crew. And almost everything in this game is customizable. There's all kinds of different camouflage and historical markings for every type of vehicle. Play War Thunder for free on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, or mobile devices by clicking my links that are down below in the video description. It's also in the pinned comment as well, so you can find it really easy. New and returning players on PC and consoles who haven't played in the last 6 months will also receive a massive bonus pack across all platforms that includes multiple premium vehicles, the exclusive vehicle decorator Eagle of Valor, 100,000 Silver Lions, and 7 days of premium account. It's available for a limited time only, so don't miss it by clicking my links down below. Now, please enjoy this conversation, almost 18 years in the making, with the one and only Bobby Lashley.
It's been a long time coming.
We're locked in.
Locked in. You were my very first wrestling interview ever.
I love seeing the picture. The picture brings me back to how style used to be.
Let me bring this up. We can talk about how silly this was. January 2007.
Right? Oh, I love that suit. And then the hat, I was definitely trying a lot of things at once.
You were trying a lot of things. I had a skunk line in my hair. I looked like I worked at Hot Topic or something. Right. I had a puka shell necklace, a soul patch,
yes,
one little yellow patch of hair, and a Zoo York hoodie. Do you remember anything from that interview? Do you remember it?
I remember that interview, yeah. I remember meeting you because I didn't do very many interviews that actually had meaning. And I remember with ours, it was a different kind of interview. And I think I told you that at the time too. Like, sometimes you have interviews where people are just question, no basis behind it. But we actually had a good talk. And I think that's what the big thing, that's what I remember from the interview.
It was Vancouver, British Columbia. We did it on the roof of City TV.
Yes.
I remember we climbed up this ladder. We went to the roof and you barely fit through the area to get up the ladder and onto the roof. And I went through real easy and I'm like, is Bobby going to fit? Kind of wedged yourself through. I'm like, oh, damn.
I'm versatile.
And I don't know why I thought it would be a good idea to try to challenge you to a fight/match during that interview.
It had meaning. It was the beginning of something.
The way we edited it was, so I set it up I don't know, a lot of our viewers might not know this, but I was an amateur wrestler in high school, quite an accomplished backyard wrestling career. I also trained to be a wrestler in college. So I'm wondering if right now you're willing to step up be a man and put that title on the line. You're like, yeah, I'll put this title on the line at any point in time. Like, what about right here, right now, on the roof of City TV? And you're like, right now, you just better have some backup. And the way we edited it was I put a record scratch in.
Okay.
Like one of those, like, whatever I was thinking at that moment. Yeah. What a terrible idea that was.
Well, it started something, and now that we can look back at it, that's how I always say with anything you do on TV or in entertainment, it's like you can't beat yourself up at the time of what it is, because you can always look back at it, if nothing else, laugh.
But at the same time, it lives forever.
I'm okay with it.
You still look exactly the same almost 18 years later.
Yeah. I think I felt like in like a little time warp that there was between like the 10 years of my life kind of just fused together when I was fighting and everything like that. And it kind of links me up. So I don't feel any older. I feel great shape. I've never stopped working out. It's like an addiction. That's my addiction. So I'm just that guy. I take it easy. I have fun, but and my kids keep me young also. When you're running around with kids, my son's like, all right, Dad, we got to go throw the football. You got to be ready. You got to be there for your kids. So that's what it was all about for me, is being able to do things with my kid and stay active because of that. And I think if you are around kids and you allow yourself to just have fun with kids, I think that's what keeps you young.
But I mean, that's your mindset, but you also look younger now than you did then.
There were some pictures where I was like, man, I was kind of chubby back then. I was like, and then now I look and I'm like, I'm a little bit more shredded now. This is good.
Your version of chubby is like jacked for everybody else.
Well, I mean, it's just how you look at it. We're all a little bit overcritical of our body. So when I look at things, I'm like, I want to change this. I want to change that. So, yeah, I felt like before when I came on, I wanted to be the big guy. I was eating like at night I would eat like a large pizza, and that wasn't even dinner. That was just an extra meal that was thrown in there to keep my weight on.
Just to get the calories up?
Yeah, just to get the calories. Yeah. I was like, I got to eat, work out. But then when you're young like that, that's all you want to do anyway. I mean, when I first got into WWE, I just came from the Olympic Training Center. So I was training all the time, and training was very important to me. And when the things happened to me, leading from amateur wrestling to pro wrestling, and I've talked about it a million times, with the bank robbery and different things like that ended my amateur wrestling career and then set me into the pros. I still had that workout mentality where you got to do more. You can't do enough. You just have to always train. So when I came into WWE, I was watching film and I was lifting. Like when I was in Louisville at OVW, that's all I did. We went to practice and lifted, and ate. That was our whole life. So by the time I got onto the show, I was like I even had to look back. I was like, damn, is that me on TV?
But the amazing thing about you and your career is you've never been a body guy. You've never just been like in that, like pigeonholed into you're just the guy that looks great.
Yeah. Yeah, because we would joke about it. There were show muscles and go muscles. And I had go muscles because I enjoy doing a lot of other things. Like I enjoy boxing, and you can't box if you're a bodybuilder, so I've always kept kind of flexibility, stayed loose and everything like that. I enjoy yoga. I enjoy being able to explore all kinds of different fitness avenues, not just pumping weight, lifting weights. And when people ask me what my training regimen is, I'm like, I don't know. Because I go to the gym as like mental clarity. I go to gym because I like to challenge myself. I always talk about challenges. And I really just go up there because I have different challenges, from my pull-up challenge to my push-up challenge and different things like that. And I do it. And then it's like I set a number for myself. It's like, all right, you did this amount of push-ups or this amount of pull-ups, and that's where you're at. Mm-hmm. And then the next time I go there, I want to be able to beat that. So there's a series of things that I have to do in order to be better at that challenge.
Are you still improving on those numbers now?
I changed the contest. Like I feel like sometimes you can kind of peak out certain things where it's like, I don't think I'm going to get any better than that. And I look at like some contests that other people have done so that I have kind of a gauge. It's like, here's where the normal people do it. Here's where the super athletes do it. And then there's where I want to go. So I would try to
beyond the super athletes.
Oh, I want to be Superman and everything. Of course, I want to see how far I can push this thing. Is the Bobby body. Like I want to see how far I can push myself. So I just keep kind of changing it. Like you do this in pull-ups, and then now your back's amazing because you just set your record in the pull-ups and you train for a month to get ready for this. Now let's go over here. Let's try something else. And then when I hear things, I'm like, I like that challenge. If I'm flipping through social media and I see like this push-up challenge, I'm like, oh, I want to do that. And then I go and try it. And I do it. And then I'm like, all right, there's where I'm at. Now let's see where we can go.
In this economy, it's always nice to save $1 or $2 or 30. This is a screenshot from Rocket Money telling me they saved me $30 on my cell phone bill. Great news, Chris, our expert negotiators were able to get you a one-time credit of $30. This was a bill I was already paying and I was already gonna have to pay anyway. And the best part about it is I didn't have to do anything. They automatically scanned my bills to look for opportunities to save, and then they negotiated on my behalf for a lower rate. I just got an extra $30. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's features. So stop wasting money on things that you don't use. See how much Rocket Money can save you and cancel those unwanted subscriptions by going to rocketmoney.com/CVV. That's rocketmoney.com/CVV.
What was the last age where you didn't have abs?
I think these damn cookies that I keep eating are going to ruin it for me. It's either the cookies or the age. Something is going to catch up with me. but I, you know what?
So never is the answer.
Never. Yeah. What was it? Was it Arnold Schwarzenegger that said, if you want to be a bodybuilder, pick your parents?
Wow.
That's kind of hard. But if you look at it in that sense, it's like
so good. And then the Ronnie Coleman ones, like everybody wants to be a bodybuilder, but nobody wants to lift them heavy ass weights.
Yeah, right. So you look at all those, and I think like genetics is a real thing. Like I see my kids, my daughter, she's happy-go-lucky with everything, but she's like a super athlete. My son is the same way. That's how my kids are. They just came out, and I had to tell them. I was like, all right, kids, sit down here. You guys have this special gift. You have to understand that. You have to like use it because that's what it is. Because their mom, she was Crystal Marshall in WWE before, so she's in great shape, And then my oldest is in college, but her mom's in great shape. But my kids, with Crystal Marshall, she was like the first NPC national champion. When they started bikini in NPC, she was the first one, and she won national. She was a national champion. So they have my genes and her genes wrapped up into one. So I'm like, guys, you might be all right athletically. Let's see what we can do with this. So I do have genetics to kind of account for a lot of it because I get away with some junk. But for me, I'm very simple with certain things. Like breakfast, I stay very basic. The things that I can stay very basic with, I stay basic.
Like what are we talking about? Just like eggs?
Let's say across the board.
Yeah.
I'll say, people ask me how many times you work out a week. I say every day. Do I work out every day? No, because if I set it for I'm going to work out every day, it gives me those chances that if I can't work out, I'm okay with it. Like if I'm traveling back on Thursday from TV. And I just feel wore out. And I'm like, man, I just really don't want to go to the gym. I just don't go. Like it throws a lot of people off if they have a set schedule and they have to change. And they're like, oh my God, it's crazy. But I say every day. So I try to go every day. If I feel good every day, I will go every day. If I feel good every day, I may go twice that day. But I never do anything to stress myself. If I really want to take off, I just take off. That's why I say every day. So same thing with my diet. Like in the morning, I'll eat egg whites and oatmeal, a little bit of blueberries, and boom, that's very basic. How often do I do it? Every day. But you know what I had this morning? I was running 2 legs and I had a leg workout. So I wanted to carb up. So I did this. I just ordered Einstein bagels. So I got like this bagels with turkey sausage, eggs, and a blueberry muffin. So am I true when I say I eat egg whites and oatmeal every day? No, technically, but I do it 90% of the time. And then those other times where I just want to switch it up or I want something different or I want to go out to eat or I just don't want to make something, then I'll just use it. So
most people, though, look at someone that looks like you that's shredded and they go, oh man, that guy never misses a meal. Everything is so dialed in. He never eats ice cream. He never eats pizza.
No, I eat it all.
This is why we hate you.
I eat it all, but then again, I say I eat it in moderation. It's like some people go at it and they eat dinner, and every time they get a dessert, you know, or they go out to drink every night of the week, and it kind of takes away from the excitement of it. You know, if I'm like, oh man, you know what, I'm go out this week, Friday, I'm geared up for it, so I go out and have a good time, and it's like, yeah. Some people like water it down because they do it too often. You know, same thing with sweets. Like I love sweets. Do I have it all the time? No, but sometimes like we like cookies. Me and my kids love cookies, and Crumble comes out with a different variation of cookies every week. So when they do it, when I get back, we order them. It's either Crumble or it's like Cookie Society or one of these cookie places. So we see which one we like the best and we order them. So it's almost weekly. So we grub out some cookies. And it usually just cures my sweet tooth for almost the whole week because those cookies are huge and we get it in. But then also when I do that, I know that there is a time that I'm going to work out. So I will get my workout in. And sometimes I just remember, I was like, oh, you know, you had a little bit of cookies yesterday. You got to be on TV tomorrow. Yeah. I want to ramp it up a little bit. So I might turn it up the volume a little bit, maybe get a little more sweat in, hit abs a little bit more, something like that. But I keep it very simple.
How did you become Bobby? Because you could be Bob, Rob, Robbie, any variation of this.
Little Bobby. My mom, so my name isn't Bobby or Robert or Frank. My real name is Franklin. My middle name is Roberto. My family's from Panama. So I'm a junior, so that's why I got the name. So that just kind of went with me. But I've never heard anyone in my family ever call me Franklin. Never once. I've always been my mom when she's yelling at me, Bob, you know, my dad, Bobby, my brother, my sisters, Bobby. I've always been Bobby. So it just kind of stuck with me. And now, you know, everybody deals with stuff. So, you know, we have a therapist, or I had a therapist that I was working with just, you know, letting yourself talk, you know?
Yeah.
And she used to always say, you got to let little Bobby out. You got this little Bobby out. You have this big frame to protect this little Bobby, because little Bobby likes to have fun. He likes to play with his kids, always in a good mood. She said, that's what people meet. And that's what they think when they meet you. They're like, oh man, he's so nice. He's so this. She said, that's little Bobby. She said, the character you play on TV is Bobby Lashley, the Almighty. So she says, I like the contrast between the two. But people that really know you love the little Bobby.
But I appreciate that you're willing to speak about that, because there's a lot of people that are going to be watching this going, Bobby Lashley goes to therapy? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, man. You know what? What's crazy is some of the, I don't want to say darkest, because I don't want to seem like anything's bad, because I'm an ultra positive person. But some of the times where I felt like I was at my lowest was, in actuality, people thought I should have been at my highest. Like when money's coming in, everything's rocking and rolling, and I'm sitting in a hotel room after a show, and I'm like, I'm by myself, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, what is, like, it's almost like an empty feeling when you're traveling on the road, and if you do it by yourself, because a lot of times I travel by myself. I just like to think and talk to people back home, talk to my kids or something like that. So I usually just travel, right? And there's that times when you're like, man, it seems like everything is good, and you're just kind of looking for something. And you know, I actually took this time and I started Googling this at one point, and I was like, ways to make yourself happy. It was crazy, because I was like, you know, things to make yourself happy. Because some people are like, oh, I'm gonna go buy a new car. I'm gonna buy this. I'm gonna buy that. I'm not there. I'm not like a very materialistic person. So to me, I was like, that's not what I want to do. That's not what makes me happy. And there was a TED Talk that came on that I watched one night, and it said, you know what, sometimes you can find happiness in other people. So at that point, I started my nonprofit, and then I started going out, and I was like, because we a lot of times we don't understand where we are in life, you know? And I say this because one time I had a friend that was going through something, and it was like, his life was like at its end. Almost felt like this person was like in the deepest, darkest place he could have ever been. And I was like, whoa, like I started talking with him, and come to find out that this guy was like, maybe like $1,200 behind. And because of that, it just kept, it was like a reoccurring thing. It just kept falling more and more into a hole, because it was like, yeah, I'm 1,200 now, but I got to try to pay something over here, which this bill comes, and it was like just a cycle of things happening. And if somebody would have just came through it and helped him out with that 1,200, it would have put him right back into an amazing position, because now he's zero balance, and now his pay can cover his bills and everything. So I was like, wow. So that's, and when I found out that, it really opened up my eyes. I was like, man, I am very fortunate, very blessed with the money that I'm making and my abilities to be able to do things and not have any worries. So I started looking out to some of these people, and I was like, how can I find and how can I help people out? And that's been kind of a big goal of mine lately, is just to go and find out where people have needs and try to meet those. My kids, I told them when I was going through this, I told them, I was like, what do you guys want to do for Christmas? I said, because I'm not buying you guys toys. I said, we're not doing it. My kids are like, what? And I was like, what? Like, really? If you guys want something, if you guys really want something, you know I'm going to get it for you. So, but I don't just like hand over things to my kids. I let my kids tell me why they want it and explain to me how it's going to benefit them in some way. And we don't just buy junk. So that Christmas, we were just like, you know what? We're not going to do this. We're going to go find a family. We're going to adopt a family. And then after that, we contacted Titus, because Titus was the most connected in everything. You know, Titus knows everyone. And he always had these big events where he had big charity events. And we went down and saw his charity event. And I'm telling you, I was blown away. This man gave away like 4 cars, like 200 and something bikes, like Nintendos, Xboxes, and then when you went inside this inside the gym at the school that he was at, if you can think of the bleachers all the way down and toys covering from the bottom of the bleachers all the way up to the top, all the way down. It was a massive amount of toys all on the floor, everything. I was like, how did you do all this? He's like, worldwide. That's what he was. I was like, man, come on, bro. I said, I want to be able to do this. The amount of people that he connected to and touched and help out their lives, man, the dude is on fire. I mean, Titus is just, he's truly a remarkable human being. And I always tell him that, because when I went to that event, I was like, I never knew what you were doing. I saw you posting stuff online, but I didn't know to what extent. And seeing this is mind blowing. You saw him truly changing people's lives, which was, to me, admirable, to say the least.
Big thank you to NordVPN for sponsoring this episode and for always supporting the channel. I don't use the internet anywhere without NordVPN. I mean, you've got a lock on your door. You should protect yourself when you're online too. Public Wi-Fi is notorious for being a spot where hackers like to hang out to try to steal your data. NordVPN protects you on there, and I love how easy it is to use, whether that's on your phone, your tablet, or your laptop. And you can change your virtual location with just one click and access content that's not available where you live. You can also use it to get pay-per-views for a fraction of the cost. So head to nordvpn.com/CVV to get yourself protected and to save yourself some money. Look at this deal they have going on right now. Less than $3 a month will get you covered, and you get 4 extra months for free. That's nordvpn.com/CVV. nordvpn.com/CVV.
How did that first meeting with Kurt Angle go down? How did Kurt Angle get you into pro wrestling?
Well, so amateur wrestling and pro wrestlers kind of have this before the relationship has been different. It's been changed up to now. But when Kurt came, I was at the Olympic Training Center training. We were getting ready for World Team Trials. So it was a big event that we were getting ready for. And Kurt was doing a vignette with WWE. And he came down, and when he was doing it, he wanted to just go through practice with us. So he was running with us, drilling and everything like that off to the side. And then, Kurt was just kind of like going around some of the people he knew. I never met Kurt, but I was a wrestling fan, a pro wrestling fan. And sometimes in the amateur rankings, you got to be a little quiet with that. But I knew Kurt, because the cool thing about Kurt was when I was in high school, he was in college. And when I was in high school, I watched his video where he wrestled Sylvester Turkey. And it was like big it was on TV. All they were doing is talking about Sylvester Turkey, how great he was. And they were talking about Kurt Angle's like the underdog in this match. And it was a great match. It was one that I recorded on VHS tapes, if we look how far back that was. I remember watching it then. So I knew Kurt then, and I looked up to him because how tough he was and how hard he fought and how much he trained. And they talked about his story a little bit. And I was like, that's me. Like, I'm a workout training aholic. Like, I love to train and get ready for things. It motivates me. So I was a big fan of his when I was in high school, and he was in college wrestling. And then I moved up to college, and he moved to WWE. And then I watched him, and I saw some of the matches he was doing. And I was a pro wrestling fan before. And when I watched him come up, he was doing like amateur wrestling in a pro wrestling world, but he was able to mix the two. And I was like, man, he's incredible. Some of the matches he had with Eddie Guerrero and some of the other people that he wrestled with, Brock, and some of the other big matches that he had. I was like, man, I love the style, you know? So now when he was out there, I'm at the Olympic Training Center, he comes back, and I was like, this is the kid. Like, I was a huge fan of him for 10 years ago. So I was like, man, this is awesome. And then he came to me, and he was like, bro, he said, man, you got a pretty good look. And he said, you watch pro wrestling? I said, absolutely, man. I'm a huge fan of yours. Yeah. And he was like, man, I'd love to be able to maybe introduce you to some people in WWE because it might be a good opportunity for you. He said, I've already talked to Coach Kevin Jackson. And Kevin Jackson said, yeah, just go talk to him. And so we exchanged numbers then. And what Kurt told me at the time, he said, if you would have accomplished what you accomplished in amateur wrestling, in basketball, football, baseball, you'd be probably multi-millionaire playing in the pros. He said, pro wrestling is our pro sport. He said, so you might want to look into it. And I was like, noted. So one thing led to the next, and then I ended up in WWE.
How close were you to qualifying for the Olympics?
Well, so it was World Team Trials the year before the Olympics. And the Olympics goes nationals, and then if you place in nationals, everybody else that comes, they go together at World Team or Olympic Trials, and if you win Olympic Trials, then you go. So World Team Trials is in between the Olympic Trials. Every year you have World Team Trials to make it onto the world team. So I had moved up in a weight class like right before World Team Trials. So this is my first kind of go at it at 96 kilos.
Which is how many pounds?
It was 211.
Could you imagine Bobby Lashley at 211?
Well, the year before I wrestled at 187 and
That's
a half.
crazy.
I mean, and I was cutting so much weight. I was like at the low 200s. So I was like.
And what are you sitting here right now?
Probably about what does it say on TV? 273.
Yeah, that's it.
I'm going to go with that. Yeah. Not quite that much, but close. But at the time, I was cutting a lot of weight for it. I always cut weight. So when I went up to 211, my body instantly acclimated, and I jumped up to like 220 something, and I felt comfortable at 220. So I cut a little bit of weight, which is the easy weight cut to make it down to 211. I went to World Team Trials for the first, and I took third. So I lost by a criteria point, which we basically tied in the semifinals. And then because he scored the first takedown, he moved on. He wrestled, he lost in the finals, and then the guy that he wrestled has to go against the sitting in national champion. So they wrestled, which was Daniel Cormier. So Cormier beat him. So Daniel Cormier went, and I lost by a criteria point. Wow. The guy that I got beat by lost by a close decision, and then Cormier beat him. So, you never can say if you could have made the team or where you were at, but on the ladder, I was like in the top 5 for sure. So
how does the bank robbery factor into all this?
Well, the bank robbery happened a month after after that tournament. It was like a month or two after that tournament. And what that does is, so the next year is where you go to nationals, and then you go to Olympic trials. Same tournament, just Olympics instead of worlds. So after a few months after that, that's when the bank robbery happened. And then when I was going into surgery after it, the surgeon told me, or the doctor told me, that you would probably have to rehab for 8 months. So based on timeline, I would have basically been rehabbing all the way up to nationals.
So what happened in the bank robbery? You dived to get out of the way of a bullet?
Well, so the guy shot, and I caught the first bullet.
Of course, yeah.
I'm going to keep changing this story until I'm the hero at this damn thing. No, it was very simple. And when I look back at it, there was a lot of like questionable things. I was personal training at the gym, and my client didn't show up, was sick or something like that. So I was like, oh, I have some money that I need to go put into the bank. So, and I had another account that I was getting money from, so I was going to put it into my account. So I went in there, and as I was walking up to the bank, it was like these guys were standing off to the side, and I saw them, and then it was kind of like a little head nod kind of thing. And then I went into the first part, took some money out of the ATM, then went through the other door. And then as soon as I stood in the other door, I was like, oh, and then I saw everybody up here go, screaming. They're dropping down. And I was like, turned like this. I don't know what happened. If the guy like kicked the door down and just because of that, the gun went off, but the gun went off. I took a dive down on the ground, and I was laying down there on just a cold pavement for a while. And that was kind of like that, let's get serious mode, because I was like, I'm in a position of disadvantage completely, laying on the ground. And that was that time where a lot of your life starts like flashing before you, because when he shot, I don't know, it was something where I couldn't even hear out of the side. So I had like a ringing in my head, and then just diving down to the ground, I felt like, just with the contact, I was like, it was shock. So my whole body was kind of in shock there for a second. And then waited for a little bit, and then there was another shot. And then I kind of moved forward, and I was like, no, don't move. Like, just staying there. And then there was some yelling and commotion going on for a little while. And then the guys like hopped over the counter, stole a bunch of money, ended up getting out. And then I heard like, is everybody okay? Is everybody okay? Because when the guys went out, the president or somebody came and locked the door from the inside. And then we started getting up. And when I got up, like my knee was just like huge. But me being a man in this situation, there was a lot of women and stuff, and there's people crying, and there was an older lady over there that was going through something, like she thought she was having a heart attack or something. So I was like, tend to all those people, and I stood off to the side for a little bit. And my knee was just pain. And I ended up going up to the hospital afterwards, and when they took a look at my knee, they said, yeah, you completely ruptured your bursa sac, and you tore this, and you tore that. It's like, what does that mean? They were like, surgery. And that was the whole thing. When I went to surgery, he was telling me everything, and I'm sitting there calculating. I'm a numbers guy. So it was like, all right, you're going to be out for 8 months and this, that, and the other. So I was like, 8 months, let me think, backtrack it. Okay, 8 months is for a normal guy. I can get ready in 4 months, and then maybe a little bit after that, then I can get ready for this, because I have to make it to this tournament, man. I've been wrestling for 20-something years at this point. Like, I've dedicated my life to the sport of wrestling. I want my chance, So I was like, I can still do this. So we had the surgery, and then came out of the surgery. I'm in this straight leg cast, and I'm not able to move for like, it was the first month. They were like, just lay around, just basically do nothing and allow this to heal a little bit before we started to rehab. So I waited for a while, and then when we started to rehab it, I started getting like super pains again. And then I was already on the mission of making it. I was like, I got to get this time down, 8 months to 4 months, and then all this stuff. So I was like putting it all in there. And then they said, nah, man, we need to do another x-ray. We did the second x-ray, and they were like, something's not right. We got to go back in there. So now they scheduled the second surgery a couple months after. So now we have a month after, because they were curing something, and something happened. I don't know what it was. And then, so basically 2 months after that surgery, I was going to a second surgery. Now my timeline's screwed.
Yeah. Terrible.
So I went through that second surgery, and then after that, I was sitting around at home and just sitting there praying. It's like, what next? I put all this time, effort, and everything in there. Wrestling has changed my life up to this point, because I was a kid that came from bare minimums. I didn't live we were poor from my high school years on up. It was not a great situation. So I pulled myself out of there and pulled myself through college. And then now I was in the Army. I was making some money, paying some bills. I had life going on, and I'm able to still chase that Olympic dream. So everything was great for me. So when this happened, it was just like, what?
Yeah.
I was like, do we have a different journey that I'm supposed to be on? I mean, what is it? And then that's when, out of nowhere, I get a call from Joe Briscoe. Hey, I know you have this Olympic trials that you want to jump into, and I know you have goals of make it to the Olympic team. But Kurt said some great things about you, and we've been trying to contact you and wanted to get you in here just to get maybe a bit of a tryout so we can see what you have. And I'm looking at this, and because this was from the time I met Kurt until this point, it had to have been 4 or 5 months, maybe 6 months later. So this is a phone call out of the sheer blue after the second surgery where I thought I was done. So I was like, yes, whatever we need to do. Yes, 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 yes. Well, so we actually planned for me to go to Louisville, to OVW, and go see Dr. Tom, go through some drills, and just get kind of a tryout. So,
but not a lot of amateur wrestlers can take to pro wrestling. You know, amateur wrestlers don't like to be on their back.
Right.
What do you do in wrestling? You fall on your back all the time.
It happens.
So how were you able to take to it?
Just kind of a learning tree. And then I was fortunate enough to be Blaster Lashley, and Blaster Lashley didn't have to be on his back that much. Neither did the Almighty.
Yeah, that's true. You don't lose a lot.
It was definitely a learning curve, because it was working with as opposed to working against. You know, in amateur wrestling, it's a fight all the time, and it's go hard, go hard, go hard. There were certain people that came in there and kind of helped me out with certain things in my game that I still kind of like play with also to this day. Like when Taker came in, Taker was watching me when I first started out. I was this big kid, a lot of energy. The crowd was behind me, and Taker was like, "You keep going down to this wrestling stance," because I kept going to wrestling mode, amateur wrestling mode. He says, "Be a star." He said, "You got to think those people are watching you here. You bring yourself down. You're a big guy." He said, "Stand up so they can see you more." Presentation is something. So I started learning little pieces like that from some of the guys that I was around when I first came in. I was fortunate enough to be around some really amazing people when I first started. I mean, the roster alone, you had JBL, you had Big Show, you had Taker, you had Cena, you had Edge, you had so many of these guys, Bob Holly, JBL. There were so many guys.
He was still there then.
Yeah, so those guys were like, "Here, let me take you by your hand."
Yeah.
And I want to work with that guy, because that's how it was. When they saw somebody come up, oh, there's fresh body to work with. Oh, I want to work with him. Finley, Regal. I mean, I worked with those guys coming up, man. You didn't even need to go to OVW, and you could just go and get put in that group, and you will get better. I mean, you just have to stand there around Finley. You crazy. Fit's probably one of the most amazing people to work with in that ring. It is magical. You could just stand there and he'll make you look like the best wrestler in the entire world. He is that good.
And pretty quickly you get put into a storyline with Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
Which is like, I mean, it doesn't get much bigger at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, that was crazy. When you first get into the business, you don't really understand how quick that machine moves. Some of the people that are in there right now, they're in there and they just don't understand the magnitude of that machine. They don't understand it.
And are you talking about the ability to, your whole life can change in a few weeks or a few months?
Yeah. I made money. I made money off, because if you think about it, when I got in, it was like 2005 when I started on the road, right? And then I was out at the end of 2007. So it was a very small piece. And I fed my kids the next, I could even say like 15 years after that with what I got from there. When I went into fighting, I would look at some of the pay that they were paying out, and there were people that made this money and there were people that made that money. And it was like in MMA, 5% of the people make 95% of the money. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
Pro wrestling is almost the same way. And when I came out, I was thrusted into that 5% that was making 95% of the money.
Because you had built a name in WWE.
Because it was WWE. They weren't just going after, oh, Bobby Lashley, the great wrestler from college. No, that's why I have so much respect for different people across the board. I don't care how many people have hated on me. I don't care if you've talked trash on me. I don't care any of that. I know what this business has done for me and my family. And my kids are fed right now. My kids are able to do things that I never would imagine doing, because of what I got from pro wrestling. Of course, yes, I did bust my ass and I put in a lot of work, but
But talent only gets you so far.
It'll get you so far, yeah.
Yeah.
You got to have people give you that pull up. And that's what I try to do with people right now. But at the same time, I always thank the people that gave me that opportunity. Like, yeah, Vince is going through a whole bunch right now. We understand that. But Vince McMahon has personally fed thousands of people, and people don't understand that. When you have a business like he created, there are so many people right now that are the amount of mouths that he fed and kids that he put through college and houses that he's bought. And there's so much that people don't understand that. Yes, there's a lot of bad things going on with him right now, but because of that business, we have so many people are able to do things that they probably never had an opportunity to do.
Did you understand the magnitude of WrestleMania 23 when they were pitching this to you?
No, but I learned, and Umaga was like, Oos, you understand how big this is? And I was just like, man, because we were on the road all the time, right? So we were just used to being there, being on the road and traveling and everything like that. We were just used to it. So when you get into a mode like that, every match is a huge match, I'm standing across the ring with some of these guys that I'm like Booker T, Kane, like I'm tagging with Kurt Angle, like JBL's across from there. Man, it was crazy coming up, being a wrestling fan still in this business and being in the ring with all these guys. I was like, so the magnitude every day was like, until I got out and was able to just sit back and say, man, that's crazy. And even now I'm having people just come to me from all walks of life. And they're like, man, you don't know what you did to my life. You changed my life. And I'm like I had a grown man a couple months ago. I was in Kansas City, and this guy he had special needs, but he was functional. And he I was sitting off to the side, and me and my girl, we were having a drink at the time at this bar, just kind of chilling in the evening. And he just kept on looking, and he was a bouncer. He was a big guy. This dude was 6'3", 6'4". See, he was put together. He's big, and he kept looking over at us. And then when I went up and went to the bathroom, he goes over to my girl and he goes, "Is this him?" He couldn't speak. So I don't know if he was deaf or he was but he had something. And when I came back, he had went back over there, and she was like, "Hey, you need to go see that guy over there." He came over to me and he showed me your picture, and he was telling me how you inspired him to keep going because of everything that he was going through. Yeah. It was very challenging for him. So he was very negative on himself. He said, you inspired that guy. And when I get up and I just went over to him and I shook his hand. I can still remember, man, the guy was in tears, and he was like, "Man, you changed my life." And I was like, wow. I said, this platform of WWE is bigger than you know. That's why I always tell the guys, I was like, one, always just take your time when you get in that ring. Just look around, man. It's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy. And I'll be running around in circles. People would see me run around in circles because I'm like a kid in a candy store, man. I'm like, this is amazing. Yeah. And I always tell the refs, I'm like, this is probably one of the greatest days of your life. Take your time and look around at this. Yeah. And I tell them, and people that I'm wrestling, I'm like, man, just take this in, man. This is crazy. Yeah. Because at some point in time, you're going to be just Bobby Lashley. Yeah. And you can look back at some of these moments and say, man, I did some really cool stuff with some really cool people. Yeah. And I said, some of those people, right now, when I came back and I was working with some of these people, I'm like, right now, you may not be the biggest name right now, but you're a name. And 10 years from now, when I'm sitting back and doing my yoga and watching wrestling, not being a part of any of it, I'm going to look back and I'm going to see the guys like Theory, Montez, and Dawkins, and some of these guys that are in there just killing it right now, Carmella and Trick, and some of these guys that are coming up right now. And I'm going to sit back and watch those guys and be like, you know what? I was in the ring with that boy, back in my day. And I'm okay with that. And I can't wait till that moment comes because those guys have the world in front of them. And I remember myself being in their shoes and their position. And I'm like, man, if there's anything that I can do for you guys, man, I would love to be able to just give you a piece of advice at some time or just be another cheerleader for you guys.
WrestleMania 23, Battle of the Billionaires. What's the conversations you're having with Vince and with Donald Trump beforehand, leading up to this match that all eyes are going to be on? It's not just wrestling fans.
Yes. It was funny. It was funny all the way through it because you just watch these two powerhouses talk to each other. So they're going back and forth. I remember, and they're on top of everything. I remember there was an iconic photo that we had where Vince and Trump were sitting down on a chair, and then we were standing above them. And then, so Austin was in the middle. I think everybody was in there crammed into this picture. And I remember it was something so small, but you saw these two, Vince and Trump, and both of them they want to be leaders here. And we were trying to figure out how we were going to sit, because they initially had it, which I don't think made any sense. Somebody put it down on paper that me and Umaga were supposed to sit in the chairs and have those guys standing with their hands on our shoulders, and then Stone Cold in the middle and them looking at each other. So little things like that are huge, you know? And then Trump was like, no, I don't think we should do this. I think we should sit down, and based on the way this angle's right here, it makes me look old, so it catches this. I don't want to see that. Let's go here. Vince was like, I want to do this. And we're sitting there looking at it. I was like, all right, I'll stand wherever you guys want me to stand, you know? So when we put it all together with these two guys, they were able to work together, and then we put it together and the picture came out perfect. I think it was right the way it should have been.
Did you show Trump how to do that clothesline?
No, but I can tell you, I remember the backstage, I think Vince was saying it, and Vince was like, because Trump wanted to be a part of it. He wanted to do something. He was like, I want to beat somebody up or something like that. And I think Vince's whole thing was like, when he starts punching me, I'm going to put my head down so he can punch my head. That's the hardest part of my head. So it's going to hurt his hand. And I think there was something in there. But those guys, I think everybody wanted to do something in that match and be a part of that match. So I don't know who told them to do it. I don't know when they told them to do it. But leading into that match, there wasn't supposed to be any altercation. But I guess they may have talked, or somebody talked, and they figured out, okay, we'll do a little clothesline because that could be easy, and then jump on top of them in the punching. I don't know where it came from, but that's what they decided to do.
So you didn't even know?
I didn't know.
How come every time there's a hair versus hair match, the razor never works? Like, it's always like figuring this out. What's going on here?
Man, and then it's hard. I was like, how are you guys going to get the clippers down there? Because there's not too many wireless clippers. So I was like, we got to plug it up someplace. And then, I remember the hardest thing with that was afterwards, when we had it, you know, Vince lost. You got to catch Vince. We got to grab Vince and put him into the ring. I was like, Vince is a big dude, you know, so just picking him up, putting him in the ring, it's going to be hard in itself. So when we are there celebrating, they all look up and they go, Vince is running and he's halfway up the ramp. And I was like, well, somebody's got to go get him. Everybody looks at me. I was like, oh. so I go running up there. So now, you know, if you catch him, then you got to walk all the way back down with him. So I grabbed him. I was like, where you going there? It's like, I almost got away. So, no, you didn't. Woo. So I pick him up and I'm walking down. So first I just finished this match. Then I got to go catch Vince. Then I got to pick him up. And then I got to bring him back to the ring. So I was blown up by the time I got back to the ring. I pushed him in there. Y'all take him. But there are so many. I mean, that's what wrestling is all about. Every time when we have matches, there's always like little nuances like that we know about, that we laugh about. That's why we have these interviews later, so we could be able to tell the crowd what happened. They can watch them back and say, oh, okay, well, we see it. But there's always little things like that we're going through. Like I remember I slammed Vince on a table at Trump Towers during it, because that's what some of the talks. He just wanted to make this thing as big as possible. When Trump came through, he was like, the first thing he said, he's like, this is you guys' world, so I'm not trying to step in it, but you just let me know what I can do to make this thing bigger. And he was like, whatever I need to do, if I need to make some calls to people, bring people in, if we need to use the tower, just tell me what I need to do to be able to make this work. So that's where he came from. And we were like, all right, cool. Because we thought, you know, most of the time when people come into wrestling, they're like, oh, I want this big spot where I'm just bumping everybody and beating everybody up. And so we kind of like construct it where we make them look like stars. Some people hate in the wrestling business. Other people are like, oh, let's just have fun with it. So I see both sides. But for him, he was just like, let me know what I can do. Let me be a part of it. And, you know, if you're in wrestling, you want to do something wrestling related.
When did you find out that you were going to lose the ECW championship to Vince McMahon?
Everything was really that day. It was that day when I was supposed to lose it. I didn't know. I mean, because I've always been like that. You can talk, and most people know me through wrestling business. I'm not one of the people to call the office throughout the week and like fight for everything. I'm like, I'm just going to make whatever we do work. So when I came in there, I knew I was in a feud with Vince, and I knew every week it was going to be something where he's getting at me. But the one thing he said, he's like, He said, oh, whenever they would do so, he said, don't worry, you'll get it all back. And I understand, and I never understood what he was saying at the time. I was like, you'll get it all back. I was like, what are you talking about? You guys had me down. You guys were slapping me, beating me up, and I had to fight through and get away. But that was a great story. And he taught me a great story. He was like, that heel that's just getting you, just can't get him back. And then when you do get him back, then the crowd's going to blow up. And that's what we did, because there was a time that I almost got him back in a tag match where it was with Shane, Umaga, and Vince. And it was like Shane came in, I got rid of him. Umaga came, I low roped him, and then Vince was there by himself. And it was like the whole crowd just was like, kill him. And then the minute I grabbed Vince, boom, they were on me. So I took it away. So it was that little roller coaster that we like to play with people. So that story was great. But then again, you're working with the boss. So he has the versatility to do whatever he wants to make the story as big as he wants it. And we had a lot of heat with that story. All the way across the board. When he won the ECW title and he came in wearing a do-rag, I was like,
that version of Vince McMahon was ridiculous. Do-rag Vince.
Oh, man. I was like, that's heat. And I didn't know, and that was there again. He was like, check this out. And he does. I was like, oh, God. but I mean, he gets it. He gets it. That's why I never really question anything that he does. I mean, he put me through some crazy storylines and some very cringy storylines and everything, but I kind of tried to find out why.
And you probably don't know in the moment, right?
No. And sometimes you go ask him, it's like, okay, Vince, so everyone telling me that you want me to go and so like beat up these 3 guys dressed up as girls, calling them my, like, you know, when you tell him that, that's great. Like, are you sure? Are we sure we should be doing it? Because I never go in there like, and some people do, and I understand their point, because fight for what you want, right? But I came in there and I was like, after we were doing something else, I forget when they put me with Leo and they started doing some different things with me, I was like, all right, can you explain to me why we're doing this? And he goes, you know what? He said, Bobby, you are so strict and regimented. You're a super nice guy. Everybody loves you. But you're so strict on yourself and so hard on yourself. He said, I want to see different layers of you. I want them to see different layers of you, because I've seen different layers of you, but we can't get it on TV because you're almost so military. He said, so one way of going about that is kind of humility. You know, sometimes you have to go and do things that are completely out of your character to be able to like get you to different places. And he was like, that's why I want to see different layers of you. And I was like, noted. I'm going to try it. Although I couldn't pull certain things off. I mean, I tried. And I think moving forward, I've been working with like acting coach and stuff like that. And he said, that's the greatest thing that you can do. You want to be very vulnerable in front of your crowd so that they can be able to gravitate to who you are and see who you are. And at that point I was like, all right, I get it. And yes, I do have limits to certain things that I would do, but I was very open to a lot of things. When I first started out, I would never been able to go into a love scene. And that was a hard one for me, especially being the first one I've ever done. So it was a hard one for me, but I think I learned a lot from that too, because it pulled me out of the character of hard, tough Bobby, want to smash everybody.
Was the Lana Rusev love triangle, was that probably the most uncomfortable you were, or like most, outside of what you had done before?
No, it could have been if I would have worked with someone else. I can say this, and I've said this several times before, but then again, I'm very positive with everything. But I can honestly say it was 100% Lana that was able to, one, make me feel comfortable doing it, and then two, just trying to do things to really further that whole feud. She was on top of everything. She was always like, all right, I got a photographer over here. We need to walk so the people see us together. So it's not like something where they're just like, oh, they don't care about it. So I was like, all right. But all I'm thinking about is, oh, who am I supposed to wrestle or go smash? She's like, no, we need to come over here and take these pictures. We need to go do this. And she was like pulling me all these different directions. And I was just like, all right. You cool with all this? She's like, yes, because she knows acting and she's able to put herself into characters. Lana's a sweetheart. And I think that she is very, I know that some people were hard on her because it was like, it seems like she tries too much. She tries too hard. And sometimes it comes as not sincere to people. And I think some people kind of jumped on her about it. But working with her, I think she's a sweetheart girl. And she really helped me feel comfortable in that role. And, I had nothing but respect for her going through it because she kept it very respectful. I was working with her and her husband, and she understood what the plan was. So she wanted to play her part.
When you were working with Umaga, walk me through that spot where you jumped through the cage.
Oh man, I was just telling somebody about this like 2 days ago, and he said the same thing. So certain things you can't practice. You're not going to be able to practice. And it was again Vince, because he was knee deep in that role. That was his role, right? So since it was his feud, he wanted to make sure everything was moving in the right direction. And we needed a button, and we were having that cage match against Bob Holly, and there was something where they wanted me to do something with the cage or throw it on top of him or something like that. And then I was like, I'll just jump into it. They were like, well, that might be hard to do because if you think about it, we have a match in there. So we're going to be throwing each other against that cage anyway. We can't just like keep it loose so you touch it and it falls.
Yeah.
So they have to buckle it. So he was like, okay, you're having a match first off. And then in order to jump this thing, you have to jump over the top rope and hit it. I was like, okay. And you got to hit it hard. I was like, okay. All right. Okay. What are you saying here? And then Vince comes out and Vince was like, you can jump over that top rope. I was like, yes, I can. So I was like, I don't see what I could do wrong. And then I said, I can jump over the top rope. And if I have to jump hard, I probably have to hit this one and like build up speed to be able to do it. They said, well, when we go out there, it's on you because that thing is latched. So if you don't knock it over and go, you're just going to jump out the fence, boom, hit it, which would have been horrible. And I think I would have been in a whole different place in my career now if that would have happened.
It'd be a totally different highlight.
Right. So I was like, done. I said, but that's how it is. If you talk to most of the wrestlers, some of the bigger moves and bigger things that happened in their career, it wasn't one of those things where I stayed home and practiced it or anything like that. It was just at the moment with the adrenaline and everything going on, it had to be done. So I made it happen. So that's what it was. I looked at him, I turned, and I didn't even know how I was going to do it, but I kind of walked in. I was like, and I walked him a little bit and I was like, all right. And I just took off and I ran and I jumped. And all I knew is I was like, I am going to hit that thing as hard as I can. So when I jumped, I was like, raw, boom. And then when you hit it, it's like it broke. So I was like, oh, we're going. And I was like, but I don't know where I'm going. Like I had no idea where I was going to end up because I didn't know if I was going to spring bounce and I didn't know if we were going to fall on him and land on him. I didn't know anything. I didn't know where I was going to land. And then when we hit, boom, and rolled, I was like, I'm completely okay. Yes. And that's how, most of the time, that's what we do. It's like something happens and then we do that whole system check. All right, fingers are good, hands are good, shoulder. Oh, I'm all right. Now fire up. So that's where I was in that sense.
I don't think wrestling fans fully appreciate how good and how dominant your MMA career was.
Yeah.
15-2, undefeated in Bellator. And I think that if a wrestling fan isn't an MMA fan, they go, oh yeah, Bobby left for a little while to do some MMA. Oh no, Bobby went to you smashed some people.
I had a good time in there. And you know what, for me is I wanted to do it in a way that my career was actually mirroring itself. When I got into WWE, when I got into pro wrestling, it was WWE first. So of course, when I'm going to MMA, it's like Strikeforce right away. Like I fought one fight and then I went to Strikeforce. So I'm always all the way at the top. But I wanted to kind of kick it back and I wanted to do some I won't say independence. I did independence in wrestling and I did independent shows there. So it actually, my record is I think it's closer to 19-2 because there's some fights that weren't even on there that I went and just did. Because I was like, I want to get fights under my belt.
Was that the original reason you left WWE back then? Was to focus more on fighting?
No. There was I was in a different stage of my life and things were going on that I just felt the need to kind of step away.
And then you found yourself in MMA.
Yeah. because I was like, you know what? I love pro wrestling. So I still want to be in pro wrestling. And if there's another avenue to go, then maybe I can do that. But I looked at it as, one, I just wanted to fight. I had a lot of my friends that I went to college with that wrestled. And before I was talking to this, I had an agent out in San Jose or in Fresno that was really tied up with AKA. So he was like, yeah, he said, man, just go in here and let's get your fight in. You want to fight? So I started training with that was back where Cain Velasquez was down there. Luke Rockhold was down there. Cormier ended up coming and all those guys were up there. So I started training over there at the beginning and I was just like, you know what? After you learn the basics of boxing and stuff like that, and then getting in there and sparring, I already had a wrestling background. I was like, I'm already kind of dangerous, because of my wrestling background. And then I started liking hands, like playing with my hands. And then I went down to American Top Team, and that's when I really developed a team because I couldn't get up to San Jose so easy, but I could down to Fort Lauderdale. So I was going down to Fort Lauderdale, and I was training before my fights. And I just started meeting a bunch of guys there, like Bigfoot. There's a couple guys, Mo Lawal's down there, and there was a bunch of other fighters, like high level fighters that were in the UFC. And I was training with these guys, and I was like, man, these guys are in the UFC right now, and I'm doing really good against them because I can always change up and hit my wrestling and then get on top of them. And wrestling is about position, so it was like I learned with Josh Barnett. It was like take people down and wrestle them on the ground, and I was like, oh, okay, that's easy. Wrestling on the ground is jiu-jitsu. So I just kind of learned his style and I felt really good with it. I felt comfortable. I didn't feel like I had any serious holes. So I was like, man, I feel really comfortable going into fights.
With the MMA record you had, how close were you to going to UFC?
Well, so at the beginning, when I first started fighting, I think there was a little talks with it. And they said, yeah, we'll give him the opportunity to, but he needs to work his way up. And I was just like, okay. And it was a decision that I had to make because one, I could fight for some other organizations that were offering more money. And I always thought if situation changes in WWE, I thought that, that's my calling. That's where I really deserve to be. I just needed time away because the situations and things were going on. So I was like, here's an opportunity for me to just kind of keep it open and then go back. So I didn't want to lock up a contract with them because I would have had to really just shut off wrestling.
But did you have discussions later on about UFC, after you had developed as a fighter?
Yes, but it was always, but when I did that, I was with Impact at the time, TNA. So I was like, I don't want to give up pro wrestling. And that was the biggest thing. I don't want to give up pro wrestling. And then when I talked to Bellator was like, we'll let you pro wrestle. And I was like, done. so I was literally doing I remember I was doing a pro wrestling match on a Saturday, and the next week I was doing a fight. I was mixing them up. I was doing both at the same time. I was like, man, if I have the ability to, I don't get hurt in a wrestling match. Yeah. I own a gym at home, so I'm practicing and training all the time, sparring 3 times a week. So to get in a fight, it's like this is another sparring match, but.
Could we have ever got Bobby Lashley versus Brock Lesnar in MMA?
I think it would have been awesome. I think we would have broke some numbers. I think it would have got crazy. But a lot of people try to talk if I was chasing Brock or anything like that. I was like, no. When I first came in, a lot of people just naturally fantasy book. They were like, well, you guys, Bobby and Brock.
You guys are just have very similar body compositions, right?
Yeah. And we both had kind of similar characters. I didn't accomplish the things that Brock did, but people still looked at it as if Brock needs a matchup, that's the guy he should be matched up with. So they looked at it that way. And then when I went into fighting, they did the same thing. They were like, let's get him to fight. And, we never really matched as far as time. When Brock got back into fighting, I was into wrestling. Mm-hmm. When I got out of wrestling into fighting, Brock got into wrestling or he wasn't doing it. So we never really were in the same environment at the same time until I was in WWE and he came back. And that was the first time we were in the same place at the same time.
That's when you guys finally had the match that people had been talking about, I think at that point for 15 years.
Yeah. I wanted to do a lot more with it. I wish we could have really, really did the things that we could have and should have and wanted to do with that.
Like what?
Man, I think, I think people would have been I think people could have really got sold into just us training to fight each other and some of the heat that we could have brought. Like Brock was a natural bully, but in this sense, he was kind of a babyface because he was that guy coming back and forth, and I was a heel at the time. But it could have showed how we prepared for a fight with each other, and it could have showed something different. Like it could have been so much like the Rocky story. Hell, if they wanted to, they could have put us two together and kind of ran as like a doggone Road Warriors kind of for a while. And then like I even went to a point where I was like, man, wouldn't it be cool if they would have brought us both back here and then put us together, had Paul Heyman find a way to put us both together. And then the whole time we win tag team titles, and he keeps referring to, I got the greatest fight in the world and the greatest tag team. And then it got to a point where like, who you keep talking about as the greatest fighter? Because you're only saying one person, you know, so that could have built some natural animosity there. And it's like, hold on a second, man. I know you and Brock have this history, but you keep saying you have the greatest fighter and the greatest tag team. So like, who are you referring to? And it could have been my ego got in the way or something like that. Whatever it was, whatever it did, but it brought us apart. Because they always say that some of the best feuds are the people that were together first and something brought us apart. Could have been. I don't know if we could have put us two together as a tag team, because it might have been too dominant. But I still see there were some people in there that we could have had great fights with and great matches with if we needed to.
How much did working with MVP change your career early on?
It was different. It was different. So the first time we really did stuff together was at Impact.
Yeah.
At TNA. And I wasn't even supposed to be there.
In Impact?
Yeah. I wasn't. I had a pro wrestling match that weekend, and I was leaving, and they called me up out of the blue, and they were like, hey, you want to come in and sub for Kurt Angle? Because I think he was having a match with EC3 or something like that weekend. And I was like, yeah, are you guys want to do something longer term? They were like, oh, well, we didn't really look at it that way. We just wanted to see if you'd be interested in it for this one-off deal. And I was just like, all right, cool, I'll do it. Yeah. So I came in, and when I did it, it was just like a little piece that I came in for a match. I think I bumped EC3 around or something. I did something there, and then the crowd was chanting, "Thank you, Dixie! Thank you, Dixie!" And they were going crazy about me coming back. So I was like, "All right." So after that, I walked back to the back, and I think I was talking big at the time, and I was just like, "You want to talk?" And he was like, "Eh." And I mean, let's be real with it. At first, they gave me one of those deals where you want to go do it, and they said we don't have too much in the budget of TNA at the time, but we can offer you something to get you started, and we can see where it goes. I was like, cool, I'm in. And at the time, a lot of times with wrestling promoters, because there's that big fight in there, he was like, okay, are you serious? But I was making really good money fighting. I was like, if I can continue to fight, then yeah, because this is what I'm doing this because I love it. Mm-hmm. I'm doing that pays my bills, and I'm making a lot of money with that. So I don't have to squeeze you guys. I want to be able to work with some of the guys that you have on the roster, and I want to be able to just get back in there and get back with the wrestling crowd. So I signed, and then after I signed, it was like, all right, we start figuring out where we're going to go. And then they said, oh, we're going to put you with MVP and Kenny King, who might start this little group, and we're going to put the title on MVP, and then we're going to go with it. Then MVP goes overseas and blows his knee out. And then they're like, oh no, this all fell apart. This is our whole thing. And they were like, all right, let's see if we can, maybe we switch gears. Maybe we can have Bobby go through and grab the title. And I did. And from there, MVP kind of stepped aside and he was cool with it. And he was like, I'll be the hype man. And Kenny King, and we just all formed and we had fun with it. It was a group that we were like, man, we didn't know how hot this was going to be, but it was good. And we saw the chemistry there. That was the first time me and MVP worked together in that sense. And we were like, man, this is good. This is really good. So we ran with it. And then I held the title for a long time over there. And I mean, I was wrestling everyone. And I had feuds with some great feuds with a lot of really cool people that I end up working with later on also.
And then did you know that AEW was going to be the right move?
No, like I said, I've one of my, a big thing for me is this huge, and I told you about this project that I was doing before, and not even for the money part, because it has nothing to do with that. I've always wanted to do this program where I just go around and I interview kids that are just excelling at sports. And I did that because I thought it was very interested to hear how these minds are working. Like, we know the guys once, like, we know Patrick Mahomes now. What was Patrick Mahomes when he was in 8th grade or 9th grade? When I was younger, we used to look at the Sports Illustrated magazine, and in the back, they would show a couple athletes on there, and they would kind of put out their accolades and everything and things that they were doing. And I used to love that when I was a kid. And I used to, because, you know, for me, with my age, you know, I didn't have internet and stuff like that. So these are where we would find out what was going on with these kids.
Yeah.
And you had no avenue to see what these kids were doing or where they went, but I just thought it was cool. And I was like, man, that would be cool if I could be on there. But I always wanted to do this program where I go meet these kids. And like I talk about my counselor again, when we were talking about, she said, you're just trying to interview a younger you. And I was like, I guess I understand that a little bit, because when I was going through sports, I achieved a lot. I won states, I won nationals a few times in college, placed at the world championships. And all along this time, I have no idea what I was thinking. All I knew is that anything but first place was a failure. And it was like, why was I wired like that when other kids are wired different? So when I got out, to make a long story short, I was like, there was a boxing match that was thrown at me, which I was like, man, this would be a cool boxing match. And it's big money, you know. It could have been the last little piece of the money that I needed to kind of like, that I was talking about, you know, paying off some debt and buying some more houses and doing some different things. So I was like, maybe just do the boxing match and then just disappear off into the sunset. So I had a whole bunch of things that I wanted to do. I wanted to do this channel where I found these kids, which I started, and I started traveling around to find these kids and doing interviews, and it's been amazing.
Yeah, on your YouTube channel.
Yeah. Phenoms to Legends. So I love to be able to just continue on that. And it's not even for the money. It's just for, I think it helps out other kids that are watching and seeing these kids. Because, you know, kids, they're like, oh man, so-and-so, this kid's so awesome. And kids think that this kid's awesome because he just wakes up in the morning and then a cake flies on his back. And he's like, I'm Superman. I'm like, no, these kids are regular people. So let's pick their brain and find out about them and see what's involved with these kids. So that's a big program of mine. And then the boxing thing I was like, man, that was fun.
Who are you going to fight?
They do a name. Dang it. Strongman, Eddie Hall. Eddie Hall.
Oh man. Like a professional boxing match? Wow.
For sure. And you know what? It's like, I said this before. Everybody was asking, they were like, well, who do you think that you can fight that's going to make you the kind of money that you want? And I was like, I'm that person. It's who they're fighting. But then Eddie Hall was also a big name also, because everybody knows Eddie Hall from powerlifting and everything. And he boxed already. He already did a boxing match. Yeah. And he did some little MMA match too. And he's a cool dude, man. I knew him from before, but then when the boxing match came up, I started just kind of going through his stuff, and I was just like, I like this dude.
So when you leave WWE, you've got options, right?
Yeah.
So you could do the boxing thing like you're talking about.
MMA.
You can go back MMA. You can go back to TNA.
Yeah.
Or you can go to AEW.
Yeah.
Why did AEW make the most sense?
Well, so I have a good friend that was working with AEW before, Dan Lambert. He was American Top Team. He was in AEW for a while, living out his fantasy. Dan's
getting mega heat.
Mega heat. Dan's one of my favorite people in this world. He helped manage me through fighting and everything like that. Has always been just a great friend. First and foremost. And I talked to Dan and we kind of discussed different options. And I asked him about Tony because I didn't know. You don't know anything about Tony if you don't know him. So I was like, oh, what about this Tony guy? And a lot of things that he told me about him, I was just like, I can respect that. He said, you know, he's got kind of like a little personality like you in a sense where he goes out of his way to be nice to people. He really he's a genuine person. He told me pros and cons and I was like, man, I'd love to be able to meet him. But at this time I was talking to MVP and I was talking to Sheldon and we were like, let's run this back. Let's run the group back. Let's do it. We have that option. You know, we're all out at this time. So let's see if we can go and do this the right way.
Especially because the Hurt Business in WWE, that didn't finish the way it should have finished.
Yeah.
What happened there?
I don't know. There was a lot of different things that you could say. I know P went on record saying that we had to die to let other people flourish or whatever it was. I don't know what the case was. I was in an office a couple times where some of the powers that be were there, and some of them were like, "Oh, we need to split it up. We need to do this. We need to do that." I was like, why? Why? There was not any real reason that was given to us. At one point in time, they said, "Well, the money's with you and MVP," and I was like, "Nah, I don't think if we're asking the crowd and we're asking the people that are watching, yes, there is value in me. Yes, there's value in MVP, but I think the purpose of our group was to build a lot of people that had a lot of talent and then put us together and see how it runs." And Cedric, ridiculously talented. I mean, across the board, he could do anything. That guy is fantastic, but he just sits back, So he needed somebody to speak for him. And the same thing with Sheldon. Sheldon, Sheldon. Everybody knows Sheldon.
Yeah.
And his history, his legacy, what he's able to do. And he needed somebody to speak for him. And me too. Like, everybody knew me. They were like, you haven't been a world champion. You've been in this business forever. When you go to TNA, you ran as a world champion there. We knew you were capable of doing it. You've been here. You're ECW champion, but you have the ability to be a world champion in WWE. You need somebody to speak for you. So it's like, I used to always say this quote. I like this quote. Sometimes you have to believe in somebody else's belief in you. So that was what the group was, is that we all believed in each other. Okay, so that we worked as a group. And I think that group was so real that's why people were like, "Man, I really like this." And it's very rare that you see that in group. You see a lot of guys coming down the ramp together, and they're all together, and you're like, I don't even think those guys hang out with each other. Those guys are not even with each other, just a bunch of people that they threw together for whatever reason. But we were actually real. And that's what was cool about it. And I think that there was a lot of cool feuds that we could have had with it. I've went on record saying a couple, and people jumped on me about, but I mean, in more present day, I would say, of course, Gunther and his group was something that I thought would have been cool for us to run with. Even when I moved over with the Street Profits, it could have been a really cool feud. Either way, it would have been a cool feud to go through. Then the Bloodline, of course, when the Bloodline was just getting going, I think it could have been a really cool little synergy between the two there. I mean, we were matching up at every level, me and Roman and then the Usos, and then you had Sheldon and Cedric. It just could have been a fun feud. And then you had Paul Heyman and MVP. Well, we can all sit back for a second, let them go at it for a while, see what happens. And it would have been fun. And
well, now you guys are all back together in AEW.
Yeah. It's a cool little thing we got going on. And see, and going back to what I was saying before, why I picked AEW is because when I did meet Tony, man, the dude was actually surprised me in a lot of different ways. Like, he knew everything. I saw him as like, he knew the matches that I had, where I was at, what I was doing, interviews that I've had, just all the way across the board. He's really in touch with a lot of things. So, and then he came through, and then one thing he said to me after we were talking, and I was just like, this is me and this is stupid, but I'm going to say it. He said, you know what? All right. Because we discussed the first part about us working together, and then where we needed to be as far as like the details of it. And he was like, all right, we'll fill this out this week. And then he just kind of like threw that off. He said, look, I'm a man of my word. You can trust me on that. And he said, you're with me for as long as we have this. And boom, I'm a man of my word. And I was like, in wrestling business, are you trying to you work?
I've seen this before.
All right, cool. And Dan was with me, and Dan was like, bro, that's one thing I can say about him, is that he's a man of his word. And he in the wrestling business is hard because at a fault, the wrestling business can eat you up if you don't have that, if you're not that, you put your foot down.
Yeah.
And I think that's the only thing that I could say with Tony, is that he goes out of his way to make sure everybody is happy and everybody's taken care of. And I think that's hard to do in a wrestling business, because you can't have everybody be the champ. You can't have everybody like look great, win every match, and have all the TV time. You've got to be able to like massage that and put it where it needs to be. But I mean, ever since working with him, everybody's been really cool. Everybody said the same thing when I came in there. They praised Tony on how he is. And he's like, and they all say, hey man, thanks for coming, because we're all working together. We want to make this thing big. So thank you guys for coming to be a part of us. And I was like, damn, okay. So the guys are working as a team trying to make this thing something big. And that's a cool place to be in.
When you do finally retire, what do you want your legacy to be?
You know what? A lot of people talk about what they want done in the ring. But for me, if people say, you know, Bobby, he was a cool dude. He was a good guy. That's enough for me. And that's across the board. I mean, if they knew me more personally, then I would want them to talk about me as a father, me as a provider for my kids and the people around me that meant something. And that's what I would really, that's what's really important to me. And I, like I said before, I understand with wrestling and some people are so dialed into the wrestling part, but at the end of the day, wrestling is just kicking and punching. There's so much more to it. There's so much more to being on a platform like you are and being able to influence so many different people around the world. And then another thing, the creative side of it is to be able to have stories and then to be able to put together stories that are entertaining for people that people talk about later. So those are the two parts that I love. And so I just want to be in the talks of some of the stories of that people look back on and said, hey man, that was really cool.
I just think your career is so fascinating because successful as an amateur wrestler, then you have a great career in the Army, successful in pro wrestling, successful in MMA, successful outside of all this just in business. Where does the mindset come from that drives you to always just want to be the best?
Man, you know what? I'm going to go back to my Phenoms program. There's a kid that I just put out today. His name is Bo Bassett. And everything that he says is everything that I believe. He's like, man, you know what? Sometimes you just got to do what you do. Like, so what I do is I love to train. I love to stay in shape. I love to everybody says stay ready. So I want to stay physically ready. I'm trying to make myself better across the board. And when I try to make myself better, I try to associate and put myself with good people. So when you do that, when you work on you and you try to just maximize who you are in the weight room, just mentally, in spirits, how the person that you are, and you just make sure you're a good person and keep building on that and then put yourself with other great people, then great things happen. So for me, it's like, that's what I attribute all my success to is like, I've always put myself in a position and in places where I'm with good people and I try to be the best person that I can be. And with that, man, I think the sky's the limit, what you can accomplish.
That's a very humble response. And I appreciate that. Don't be humble for a minute here.
All right.
What makes you as good as you are?
I'm different. I'm different. I can't be. You can't build another me. I'm a very unique character. I think that, and I think that's one thing that's important on TV. Like you see, there's some people that are like, I want to be this person. I want to be this person. There's nobody that I really fit in the direct line of who I am. And I think that's what makes me different. I think that's what people gravitate to me. They say, like I always say, I'm an ordinary person. I just do extraordinary things. And I say that because I've done some stuff where I'm like, damn, I really did that. You know, like there was one that I went viral of crushing this watermelon. Yeah. I just did that because my godson comes back. He was living with me at the time, Xavier. He was like, hey man, this is viral on TikTok. You think you can break this watermelon? I was like, yeah, I think so. Yeah. He was like, all right, well, I'll get the camera. And I was like, all right, let's go inside. So if I break it, it doesn't mess up the inside. So we go out there and then he grabs the thing and he goes, you know, we don't have another take because we have one watermelon. So I grabbed the watermelon. I was like, I squeeze it like this just a little bit. And I was like, damn, these things are harder than I think. Because what happens is when you start squeezing it compacts. So it gets harder. So I was like, all right. I was like, I don't think we should do this on live because if I don't get it, I'm going to look really bad here. And then he goes, oh, you don't think you can get it? So now he starts clowning on me. So I was like, give me that damn thing. Get the camera rolling. I'm going to do it one time first. Check it. So we just grab it and I was like, argh! And then I got to this sticking point where I was like, oh, no. Now it's that sticking point where it's really compact. And I was like, you got to get through that. So I was just like, boom, when it broke it. I was like, oh, that was cool. So I dropped it and I was just like, dang. And then he was like, damn, bro. And then he put it out. And I was like, those are one of those times where it was like, I do have superpowers.
I believe it.
So that's what it was. I've been like that my entire life. So I've always said that I've had these really cool ass wow moments. and like winning nationals in college and standing on the stage and going and walking out there in college. Like just different things that happened in my life. Being in the battle versus the hair match. Just going into WWE and going through it. My friends back home watching me. They're like, "Did you see Bobby on TV?" You know, and then walking out there in MMA. Like my first fight, when I was walking out there, I'm out there walking out there. I was like, "What am I doing?" I'm in Miami, going to American Airlines arena. I'm walking out there about to fight some dude. I was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, just ride with it, man. And that's how it's been in my life. I've been like, just ride with everything. Just go. Like, because I think what people do is that they get in this bubble of like, oh, if I fail, there's no way you can fail. There's no way you can fail. And most of the things you do, there's no way you can fail. If you go out there with a good mindset and a good attitude and just give it all and just have fun with it, man, there's no way that you can fail.
It's win or learn, right?
Yeah. And if you don't put yourself in those places, it'll never happen.
That is how, to bring it all the way right back around, that's how my very first interview with you happened.
Yeah.
I was working it ended up becoming MTV2 Canada. I was on a show called 969, and I just said to my boss, I said, we interview comedians and actors and athletes all the time. When WWE comes to town next month, do you think we can interview them? Yeah, sure. We do that all the time. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get paid to talk to a wrestler? And they were like, Bobby Lashley's the one that's going to be doing press. He's the ECW champion. And it was amazing. So I want to say thank you for that interview in 2007. And thank you for this one now.
Yeah. It's crazy now that people are coming to you for interviews now. Before you wanted to go to the wrestlers, when I saw you, I was like, man, he's interviewing everybody.
Trying.
Cena, Paul, I mean, everyone. So now it's to the point right now that you're the man. So wrestlers are like, man, I got to get on Chris's podcast.
Wow. Put in a good word for me.
Yeah, man. I'm sure everybody would want to get on here. I was coming up here. I was talking to P, and P was like, make sure to tell him I want to do another interview with him because I got my podcast starting. I just want to get it set first before going. I was like, man.
Well, good. I'm going to text him right after this.
So they want you.
No, thank you. That means a lot to me. And it means a lot to me that here we are almost 18 years later.
Damn.
Running it back again.
Damn. And I'm only 21.
How'd that happen? I'm going to wrap this up with a question that I asked everybody at the end.
Sure.
Gratitude is the focal point of my life. It means so much to me to focus on the things that I have rather than focus on the things that I don't have. What are 3 things in your life, Bobby, that you're grateful for right now?
100% my kids. My kids are like my fuel in life. My kids are just so much more. So first my kids, and then I say my health. And I say that because it goes back to my kids, you know, I always want to be there for them. And then I want to say my faith. And I say that in a very loose way because a lot of people say faith. It's like, where's your faith, a particular faith? My faith is something bigger. You know, my faith is everything that I do and how I feel and what I believe and how I want to treat people and how I want to be treated and everything like that. It's all in my person, my faith, my belief, why we're here and why we need to work together. So it's just me. It's just being very, very simple. So my kids, my health, so I can be here forever, just to be there for them and so many different people. And then just my faith across the board. Just I believe in God. So I believe that God put us down here just to be better and help each other out and just do good things and spread goodwill. So
I can't thank you enough for this.
Yeah, man.
Appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you.
And I can't wait to see what's next for you.
Yeah. Sky's the limits.
Thank you for checking out this episode with Bobby Lashley, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I can't believe it's been 18 years since that first interview that we did, and he still looks exactly the same. It's crazy. Shout out again to War Thunder for sponsoring this video, and make sure to check out War Thunder now for free on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, or on mobile, and use my links in the pinned comment or video description to register. Those of you who are new or who haven't played for the last 6 months will also receive a massive bonus pack across PC and consoles.